To begin, I will recap the sequence of events that led me here. In 2013, I was one of 9 people who testified for Evidence.zip in order to ban Leffen from Smash tournaments. Evidence.zip can be considered an inner monologue of malicious tendencies that Leffen regularly used to exhibit. As time went on, I noticed that Leffen never actually changed since those days, but that he specifically began to conceal his true nature so that he wouldn't get banned again. After years of witnessing several acts of malicious intent toward the community that were in line with what got Leffen banned in 2013, I created Evidence.zip 2 in June of this year. However, Evidence.zip 2 was notorious for being so poorly presented that I essentially crashed my good standing within the community. This caused me to rapidly get banned from many tournaments. In August, I returned with Evidence.zip 3 to properly convey the message I was originally trying to send. Evidence.zip 3 was met with very favorable reception. It is widely regarded as a well-made documentary which properly lists Leffen's motivations and wrongdoings in a more reasonable manner. I'll always regret the fact that Evidence.zip 3 wasn't the original video I put out, as I believe I could have won the court of public opinion if it was. However, I can't fix the past, and so the only thing I can do is proceed from here, which will start by addressing the ban statement that is currently being used to bar me entry from Smash tournaments. The ban statement that is currently being used against me is nothing short of preposterous. Between the double standards, mental gymnastics, and lines of logic that are used to make it seem as though Leffen is innocent and that I'm the guilty party, this is a massively corrupt ban statement. Leffen is constantly portrayed in the most charitable manner possible throughout this ban statement, and nearly every allegation I made against him has been dismissed and reframed as defamatory on my end. The belief that my ban statement is corrupt is the consensus on social media as well. On Twitter, nearly every quote retweet of my ban statement points out these obvious hypocrisies which reveal that the Smash community isn't acting in line with a court of law. Furthermore, there have been many tweets lately from observers which have pointed out signs of corruption, such as these two from Sylvanas. If you've been following Smash politics lately, then you'd know that there are currently 3 people in contention: me, Jisoo, and Leffen. According to the Smash community's current verdicts, I'm banned while Jisoo and Leffen are unbanned. However, under verdicts that are in line with that of a court of law, I maintain that I would be unbanned, Jisoo would be banned, and Leffen would be banned. There are many people who share this exact opinion, and while I firmly believe that Jisoo and Leffen should be banned, this video will mostly focus on getting myself unbanned. I believe that me being banned is the most egregious of the Smash community's current verdicts, as it is largely the result of misunderstandings. Going back to my ban statement contains an opening statement followed by 18 paragraphs. I'll be addressing each individual paragraph of this ban statement with counterarguments that'll be supported by Evidence.zip 1 and 3. I'll begin with the opening statement, which mostly serves to list the charges against me. These are directed and malicious intimidation, harassment, or bullying of any participant whether by language or conduct, and malicious gossip with the intent of manipulating the victim's social circle, defamation of character. For starters, the idea that Leffen is the victim in this situation is preposterous. In Evidence.zip 3, I provided proof that Leffen has been stalking and harassing me for the past 10 years. This was why I originally testified for Evidence.zip in 2013, and it would persist afterward as well. Leffen's main goal in recent years has been to interfere with my attempts to provide the community with products and services. Most notably, Leffen went out of his way to ban the box and end my career in 2017. Leffen would also interfere with the work I did that led to UCF, overrun my free online tournament series, interfere with the box's politics in other ways, and so on. There should be no mistaking the fact that Leffen isn't the victim in this situation, even though he publicly claimed that he is. This claim is easily debunked by several excerpts from Evidence.zip such as this one, which describes Leffen's tendency to play the victim card in order to evade accountability and flip the situation on the people who he abuses. Going back to the charges being pressed against me, the defamation claim is just as preposterous. Not only were all of the claims I made against Leffen truthful and backed by evidence, but furthermore, Leffen should be banned for what he did to Hungrybox according to this logic. I'm referring to the smear campaign that took place between 2017 and 2019, in which Leffen baselessly encouraged the community to isolate HBox. At one point, Leffen's smear campaign caused HBox to condemn the community and contemplate leaving it. Leffen would respond to HBox being at rock bottom by encouraging the community to exile him, as can be seen in this tweet. The situation HBox was in back then is eerily similar to the one that I'm in right now, and it should be understood that Leffen is the common denominator. Moving on to paragraph 1. Paragraph 1 has several issues that I want to highlight. The first issue is the claim that I frame Leffen in the least charitable light possible, which I'll contend by claiming that this ban statement frames him in the most charitable light possible, and that it seems to provide no real reason for doing so. The next issue is the claim that I don't provide evidence for framing Leffen as a pathological liar, a psychopath, a manipulator, etc. This is false because I provided basis for these claims in the form of Evidence.zip testimonies. I should mention that Leffen has thoroughly lied about Evidence.zip throughout his career by suggesting that it was nothing more than hearsay. He has also gone as far as to influence media outlets such as TSM and Red Bull to produce propaganda which portrayed Evidence.zip as though it was some type of hero story. However, evidence.zip was actually much darker than that, and I happen to know this because I testified for it. Evidence.zip contained plenty of quotes which labeled Leffen a manipulator and a psychopath, and considering the fact that he's continued to lie about evidence.zip for all these years, it's perfectly reasonable to assume that those things are still true. I'd also like to highlight the quote that reads, "In conclusion, Leffen is in his own tier of maliciousness and potential damage to the community, as it gives basis for claiming that Leffen tends to act with malicious intent." Moving on to paragraph 2. This paragraph mostly criticizes me for framing Leffen in a negative light and alleging that he has a tendency to claim victim status. I've already shown justification for both of these things, so I'll be skipping this paragraph. Moving on to paragraph 3. The main aspect of this paragraph that warrants explanation is my claim that Leffen is performing a totalitarian regime on the Smash community. I use this metaphor because I do believe Leffen engages in several strategies you'd expect from a corrupt leader who's looking to gain a stronghold over their community. These include the corruption of the media, the tactical elimination of threats to influence, and various social engineering methods. As I said earlier, Leffen has been corrupting the media throughout his career in order to conceal the truth about evidence.zip. The most egregious example of this happened recently when Leffen pressured Samox into revising the metagame documentary to erase footage of evidence.zip victims. Leffen outright lied by claiming that evidence.zip was nothing more than a bunch of forum posts, which led to him being rewarded with propaganda which heroized him. This was not only a slap in the face to evidence.zip victims, but also a brainwashing attempt on the current generation. Next, there is reason to believe that Leffen has an interest in canceling or stifling threats to his influence. The first thing to know is that the main offense that got Leffen banned from Sweden in 2013 was attempting career murder on several players. One player, for example, wrote, "Leffen has worked to exclude me from the Smash community to the highest degree possible." The rest of the testimony then proceeds to explain the insane lengths Leffen would go to in order to remove the specific person from the community. In recent years, Leffen has gone after much higher priority targets. I've already covered Leffen's vendettas against me and Hungrybox, so next I'll go over M2K and Zero. Leffen targeted both of these people during last summer's Me Too movement. Leffen targeted M2K by circulating a rumor which would have ended M2K's career if it ended up being true, and he targeted Zero by backing up Jisoo's baseless allegations. To be clear, Zero would later end up being proven guilty of other charges, but the initial conspiracy against him was illegitimate. Finally, Leffen engages in plenty of social engineering methods in order to ramp up the rate at which the masses conform to him. The best example of this was when Leffen manipulated the entire community by taking the helm of last summer's Me Too movement. Leffen's YouTube video from July 2nd, 2020, which has 800,000 views and 97% upvotes, was entirely a farce. Within this video, Leffen fraudulently claimed that he could resonate with sexual assault victims through the use of a grossly embellished testimony. There is an evidence.zip testimony that directly contradicts everything Leffen said in his YouTube video by proving that he was, in fact, the abuser within a story in which he claimed he was the victim. Furthermore, I reached out to the person who wrote this testimony earlier this year in order to ask him what he thought about Leffen's Me Too involvement. He told me that Leffen was blatantly a sociopath taking advantage of people during a vulnerable time period, and that he wished people would see through Leffen's compulsory acts of deception. Another example of Leffen's social engineering can be seen in his feud with Salem. People quickly forgot that Leffen instigated this feud, and so Leffen was able to mobilize the Smash Ultimate community underneath him at a very efficient rate. Another example was when Leffen told the Genesis 6 crowd to calm down when they began to riot against Hungrybox. The irony here is that Leffen's actions were what led to people hating HBox to this degree, which HBox's mother called Leffen out for. Leffen telling the crowd to calm down shows that he's well versed in the art of shifting socioeconomics in his favor. I originally used the term totalitarian regime because these are, in fact, proven strategies for rising to power. I've also shown plenty of basis for claiming that Leffen is devoid of morality. As for my claim that Leffen would willingly push Zero to suicidality for financial gain, I believe this is reasonable considering the way Leffen treated Zero during his downfall. A good example of Leffen's malicious nature can be seen in the way he accused Zero of lying and manipulating people after Zero made a post about entering therapy. Leffen criticized Zero for not making an actual apology, which is fully hypocritical considering the statement Leffen made after I uploaded evidence.zip 2. Within Leffen's statement, he not only claimed victim status, but also outright stated that none of my claims were credible. This was, of course, identical to the way Leffen responded to evidence.zip 8 years ago by refusing to apologize to anyone and instead claiming victim status. Considering the way in which Leffen accused Zero of engaging in this exact pattern of behavior, on top of the fact that Leffen hijacked the Me Too movement in the first place, I find it very hard to believe that he wouldn't be willing to push Zero to suicidality in order to get rid of him. Lastly, I'd like to point out that paragraph 3 openly states that Leffen is guilty of harassing me and Hungrybox as though that's an acceptable thing to do. This is an openly rigged ban statement which makes no effort to conceal that Leffen is under protection from being held accountable. Next, I will move on to paragraphs 4 and 5. These paragraphs continue to reveal the degree to which this statement is rigged in Leffen's favor. Paragraphs 4 and 5 use the phrase unfalsifiable in a manner that people shouldn't be deceived by. Normally, unfalsifiable refers to the inability to determine whether something is true or false for certain. However, my ban statement pushes the boundaries of this phrase by suggesting that any assertion I make that Leffen is acting maliciously is malicious in itself, since it can't be proven. This is nonsense because not only have I shown a massive amount of proof that Leffen is malicious in general, but furthermore, all the situations in which I accuse Leffen of acting maliciously are accurate beyond any reasonable doubt. To show you just how egregious the lines of logic being used in my ban statement are, I'll debunk the way in which it tries to claim that Leffen didn't act maliciously throughout the interaction listed in bullet points. This interaction had to do with Leffen contacting my engineer during the box legality phase in order to convince him to let Leffen take home a modded GameCube controller. I asserted that this was sabotage, which it was. However, my ban statement suggests that I defamed Leffen by asserting this, since we can't know his intentions for certain. To show you how preposterous this is, let's go through the sequence of events that was going on at the time. In March 2017, Leffen spread massive amounts of lies about the box on social media with the obvious intention of getting it banned. I quickly responded to Leffen's lies by pointing out his malicious intent, which Leffen responded to by claiming he had no malicious intent. Leffen then immediately contradicted this statement by stating that he made contact with my engineer. Next, Leffen manipulated my engineer into agreeing to let him take home a modded GameCube controller. My engineer nearly handed the controller over to Leffen at the tournament Royal Flush, which I stopped him from doing at the last minute. Finally, after Leffen got home from Royal Flush, he began spreading rumors on his stream about how I'd stolen his controller. To be clear, the controller in contention never belonged to Leffen. The first and third actions within this sequence are malicious beyond any reasonable doubt because they involve Leffen lying. My ban statement tries to make the massive leap in logic that the second action, the only one possibly up for debate, can't be deemed malicious for certain, and therefore I defamed Leffen's character by asserting malicious intent within this action. There's no jury on the planet that would be fooled by this line of logic. Moving on to paragraph 6. This paragraph once again frames Leffen in the most charitable light by stating that his decision to leak chat logs was evidently pretty bad, but that he surely felt regretful about it considering how quickly he deleted the tweet. To be clear, this is in reference to Leffen publicizing the fact that I used to have PTSD from his abuse while I was in the midst of trying to get the box legalized. For one, Leffen only took down this tweet because tons of people pressured him to do so. Secondly, Leffen claimed victim status directly after taking the tweet down, which is ridiculous. Thirdly, Leffen would once again leak this information 3 years later on the night of the metagame broadcast in order to make it seem as though I created evidence.zip all by myself, which clearly shows that he was never regretful. This is yet another example of how my ban statement is heavily rigged in Leffen's favor. Moving on to paragraphs 7 and 8. These paragraphs touch on the infamous conspiracy in which Leffen and Jisoo went after Zero, which led to Jisoo going after Sky Williams. Jisoo's motive was presumably to gain clout by being able to say that she cancelled big names in the community. This is obvious based on the fact that she put Batman in her bio directly after making allegations without providing any evidence, as Technicals has pointed out. From there, we can assume that Leffen wanted Zero gone in order to service his usual agenda of targeting threats to his influence. Motive is ultimately irrelevant, however, as the bottom line is that these parties did conspire. This is obvious based on several factors. For one, Technicals dug up logs in which Jisoo could be seen conspiring in excitement. Secondly, Leffen is currently mass blocking people who've attempted to confront him about his involvement, as can be seen in these Twitch chat logs. Thirdly, the idea that Leffen would hijack the Me Too movement with a false victim testimony and then go after high-priority targets with anything other than malicious intent is preposterous. And finally, the conspiracy between Leffen and Jisoo can be seen in broad daylight within this series of tweets, which shows Leffen laying out the red carpet for Jisoo to make her allegations. On July 2nd, 2020 at 7:38 p.m. EST, Leffen encouraged people to keep believing victims who were brave enough to come forward, which Jisoo followed up on 32 minutes later with her first round of allegations. Moving on to paragraph 9. Paragraph 9 doesn't contain much other than an attempt to condemn me for claiming that Leffen would probably prefer if Zero was dead. This ultimately isn't relevant, so I'll be moving on. Next up are paragraphs 10 and 11. These paragraphs discuss when Leffen circulated the rumor about M2K. Unfortunately, M2K has personally requested for me not to discuss this subject any further, and so I hope the people reviewing this video can understand that. The most I'll say is that whether or not Leffen acted in good faith doesn't exactly matter here, as he did in fact circulate a rumor which would end up being untrue. Going back to my ban statement, we are now up to paragraph 12. This paragraph antagonizes me by stating that there is sufficient reason for Leffen to feel uncomfortable being in the same space as someone who's made the claims Hax has. I have no idea why the solution to this problem wouldn't be to ban Leffen, the person guilty of the claims I've listed, rather than me, the person making the claims. I also want to add that nobody would have ever had reason to think that I was a threat to Leffen's safety if not for Leffen himself planting the idea in people's heads, which is yet another one of his manipulative strategies. The remainder of my ban statement consists of either blank text or subjects that I've already addressed. I'll briefly display paragraphs 13 through 18 so you can see for yourself. That brings me back to the verdicts I listed early on in the video. I maintain that I am not guilty because my only mishap was presenting evidence.zip 2 in a socially inept manner, which I'd like to apologize for once again. Jisoo is guilty of participating in a conspiracy to cancel Zero, and most notably an innocent Sky Williams whose life would perpetually have been ruined if not for technicals exonerating him. Therefore, Jisoo deserves to be banned. And finally, Leffen is guilty of an astronomically long list of charges that make him the single biggest threat to society in the Smash community. Leffen's key charges include hijacking 2020's Me Too movement, which led to him being a necessary accomplice in the aforementioned conspiracies against Zero and Sky. Spreading a rumor about M2K which would have ended M2K's career, presumably with malicious intent. Stalking and harassing hacks for the past 10 years with the intention of preventing hacks from providing the scene with any type of product or service. Most notably, an attempt to end Hacks' career was made in 2017 when Leffen aggressively tried to ban the box. Smear campaigning Hungrybox with the intention of socially isolating him to the point that he'd be motivated to retire. And corrupting several media outlets in order to conceal the truth about evidence.zip. Most notably, Samox was humiliated for his accurate portrayal of evidence.zip within the metagame documentary and forced to return with Leffen propaganda. Furthermore, Leffen openly engages in every strategy in the book in order to evade accountability. For example, Leffen publicly deletes evidence, lawyer bluffs, censors people who confront him with allegations, claims victim status, and endlessly flees from gaming community to gaming community once the pressure's on. We're trying to catch a criminal in plain sight at this point. One last thing I want to mention is that Leffen surely still maintains the belief that he'll never be banned in a million years, as he used to say on Smashboards. There's more than enough evidence for us to say otherwise at this point, so it's really just a matter of whether people want to continue to permit this type of behavior or not. Something I want to emphasize is that keeping Leffen around means knowingly letting him continue to select more victims, and so the entertainment he provides needs to be weighed against that fact. This has been well known ever since evidence.zip. For example, there is a quote from a player named C that reads, "If people actually took the time to wrap their heads around what actions Leffen has exhibited toward me and many more, the thought of doing anything less than not welcoming him to any future tournaments or gatherings is ludicrous. The mere thought of it is preposterous, and the act of allowing the things he'll subject others to is nothing less than grotesque and an act of cruelty toward his targets. You must understand that he has yet proven to show any sign of remorse whatsoever concerning his actions, how they affect people, what they have to go through and put up with, nor how it affects not only them, but poisons the entire atmosphere and well-being of the community as a whole. And until that fact changes, it would be preposterous to invite, accept, or allow this guy anywhere near the people he constantly subjects to acts of malicious intent, not to forget or undermine the urgency in sparing any new potential prospects. The indecency in prolonging this is truly nothing less but an act of cruelty. This quote implies that Leffen will inevitably select more victims if given the opportunity to, and so people need to be fully aware of that. Therefore, I'm in favor of not only banning, but potentially even deplatforming Leffen, as the gaming realm desperately needs to restart without him.
There's this saying that I like, that is, all it takes for evil people to succeed is for good people to do nothing. And I really do think that's true. In my opinion, the world is not filled of majority evil people. I think that's something that people tell themselves in order to kind of put blame away from themselves, that they couldn't have done anything, everyone's bad, and if I'm bad, I'm just part of the majority. I really do think that the majority of people are either decent or good. However, many good and decent people do not do enough, myself included. And we need to change that.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching the video. Now that quote that I just provided you with, I played it at the end of evidence.zip 3 as well, and I figured that I would replay it here because it really is just such an ominous declaration surrounding this entire situation and what is going on here within the Smash community, because the quote is Leffen himself declaring exactly why he's been so successful throughout all of this, and it's because no one's doing anything to stop him. But back when people heard the quote, surely everybody interpreted it in the reverse direction. Surely people thought what Leffen wanted them to think, which is that he was the one protecting them, when in reality now we all know that the Me Too movement was used for nothing more than exploitation. Now, with that being said, I want to start by saying that I can't understate how important I think it is that I get unbanned and that I get my name and my reputation back, and that I'm allowed to do things like host Hacks' nightclub without my name being stripped from the tournament series. Because there have been some serious misconceptions here, essentially I had nothing but the truth to tell you ever from the very start, but I just didn't really tell the truth well the first time around. And that's because I needed to cover some complicated concepts that I actually had to do quite a bit of research toward discovering and understanding. I had a feeling that something was wrong here in the Smash community because I noticed that Leffen was consistently able to manipulate and mobilize people however which way he pleased, and no one seemed to be able to detect malicious intent throughout any of it. I saw through all of it because not only have I been subject to a harassment campaign for the past 10 years, but also because I've had access to the evidence.zip testimonies, which reveal that Leffen's an entirely different person from what the current generation seems to think. But like I said, other people weren't really aware, and so I noticed that as time went on, he would engage in not only acts of manipulation, but also several actions that were designed to facilitate his ascension. And the community as it currently stands is completely structured to support that ascension, as can be seen in my ban statement, which was completely rigged against me. By writing this ban statement, they actually proved all the points that I've been trying to make from the very start, which is that this really is functioning like a totalitarian society, in the sense that things like harassment campaigns and defamation campaigns have been culturalized and they are to be worshipped and supported. The type of stuff that happened to me in Hungrybox, for example, we now have reason to believe that by speaking out against this, you will get in more trouble than Leffen himself will for perpetrating these campaigns. And that's why the overarching message of my videos has been to implore the community to reconsider the fact that these shifts in social dynamics are openly being allowed to happen. Because if Leffen isn't stopped dead in his tracks, then you have to worry about where he ends up in another decade from now. And I say that because this was all predicted a decade ago in evidence.zip. And now here we are today living in what I consider to be the most dangerous status quo in Smash history. It's just truly a tragic situation. It's backwards, it's dystopian, it's an injustice, it's everything. And the fact that they're now rigging ban statements against people like me who are trying to educate the public on what's going on shows how deeply rooted the problem truly is, because it shows that they want to exacerbate the problem rather than solve it. And as someone who's grown up within this community, that's extremely concerning to me. So, ironically, by rigging the ban statement, they not only proved all of my points, but I think they gave me the opportunity to make this video, which sums up all my points in the most concise manner yet. So it's actually a gift and a curse what they did. Hopefully this video encourages people to support not only me being unbanned, but also perhaps changing their view on the subject in general. Now, with that being said, there's one final resource that I highly want to recommend, and I've linked it in the video description. It's a video that explains concepts that I've been trying to explain ever since evidence.zip 2 better than I ever could have phrased them. And the timing of this video coming out is honestly fated. It just came out in August, and it perfectly describes a lot of the malicious shifts in social dynamics that I've been trying to convey from the very start. So I really encourage influencers, top players, TOs, etc. to check that video out, because it's wildly applicable to the current state of the Smash community. So with that being said, thanks again for watching the video. I hope that the community supports me being unbanned. I just want to reinstate that the whole problem was that I didn't initially convey my thoughts properly due to the complexity of the situation. But now I think this is a great video that actually sums up my thoughts pretty well and gives people a lot to think about regarding the future of the community. So thanks again, and have a good one.